Hey guys, Infidel1258 here. Today we're going to get into some of my data analysis around which cards are working and when and why. And so it's a bit of a deep dive on some Splinter Coach data, and that is a website that will track your monster data within Splinterlands, what cards are you playing with, how are you winning when you win, and how you lose when you lose. So if that sounds interesting, stick around. Let's get into it. So the first thing I want to show you is a battle, and I have a battle here that I just literally fought a moment ago, and I think this is going to tell us something that is pointing to one of the use cases that I find for the Night Stalker. The Night Stalker is a very successful card. I'm going to pull up the data for that card. It's maybe not as good as I first saw that it was in my initial reports on it, because I did do a video maybe a month ago talking about how good it is, and I think that case was overstated. But that was in part because of a small data set, and it was also in part because not everybody had seen it as much as they now have. And so there's growing familiarity, and there's new ways to respond to it. And it's like the nuclear arms race of how to use these assets, right? It's like I find a good offense with a tool, you find a great defense that counters that offense, until we find the real equilibrium of what the true meta really of that card is. And the evolution of that with the Night Stalker has had some ups and downs. And so the Night Stalker here, zoom in here. The Night Stalker on my screen is at 121 wins and 98 losses with a 55.3 win record. It's my 90th overall lifetime. If I go current month, the number moves rapidly up. We're at 630 and we're second overall in terms of the card I'm using the most this month. That's only 9 days in December. And so you might say the data, again, too small of a sample size. Sure, but plus 600 is an amazing win rate. And it is, you'll notice that across my entire life, the Dr. Blight card is the number one with over 2,000 matches played with a 546 win record. And it's interesting to see how high that is across so many games. And when I again zoom in current month, we're above that on the Night Stalker, but that data size is just not adequate. When I zoom in across, when I do again go back to lifetime with the Night Stalker, we're at 553, very comparable to the Dr. Blight. But I do say, so I'm starting to believe that this will carry, and that this data is more and more reliable, that it is on par with in terms of effectiveness. Is it on par in terms of how often it can be used? That's more difficult to at this moment say. It certainly is countered really hard by, for instance, Tofu. It doesn't have the hit points to survive the thorns. And when somebody brings an amp, you're dead. You're dead in maybe round 2 if you're lucky. And so, for those reasons, it's super, Tofu being as prominent as it is at the higher league levels makes this less reliable at some of those places where we're talking champion 2, champion 1. But then within Diamond, this thing seems to soar. And one of the interesting notes that got me on here today to do this video was really the fact that the Night Stalker, in comparison to the Dr. Blight, is actually displayed in this video. And this is one of the ways the Night Stalker has really changed the meta. The fact that it makes vulnerable camouflage cards. Camouflage cards, their bread and butter is that they cannot be found. They cannot be seen. They're hidden from sight. And the Dr. Blight having scavenge in conjunction with camouflage means that it's often alive long into the game's match when it has had an opportunity to scavenge 6 or 8 or 10 new hit points, making it a 14 hit point beast, which is a great recipe for it to be a winner. That's part and parcel of how it wins so often. But when we press play here, and maybe you already know what's going to happen, my sneak attack on this is going to blast damage to Dr. Blight, and we almost killed it in round 1. And then of course he gets scavenged up, and he got a martyr up, but we're done here. It's almost better for me that he has a Dr. Blight in the camo spot, because I'm skipping over him, penetrating the 5th spot and creating damage across 3 units, not 1. If it was a true sneak attack and there was a visible monster in the 6th spot, I would strike the 6th and damage the 5th with the blast. But because of the scenario with the camo, I'm going to the 5th, hurting them and the 2 adjacent monsters. So that's it's just interesting in my mind to see not just how the data compares to a great, one of the legends, one of the best of all time, the Dr. Blight card, but actually specifically how it counters that one particular card. And that actually brings me to my second point that I want to feature. I mentioned tofu a moment ago, and I've rented tofu recently, and man, the data around tofu is just crazy. With me trying to force it into every scenario, like, I mean, just stuff it into any situation and circumstance. What did I get? Tofu. I rented it for 2 days. Eternal Tofu, 16 and 8. 16 and 8, 667 win percentage. That's a crazy win percentage, man. Not only is that that's literally the best win percentage I have across any summoner ever. Like, and that goes back into Chaos Legion with things like that competes with, like, you know, at minimum it competes with Panda, but it also it's like in the ballpark of what you would have expected at the, you know, the creme de la creme moments for Kitty. And so for all those reasons, man, this card is crazy. And you've seen it, you've lost against it, maybe you win with it all the time. This is me trying to stuff it into every situation. If we look at the data specifically and we go mana cap, I was trying to use this thing in 12 to 19. I had a 2-2 record in 12 to 19. I think I might have literally played it in a 12 mana match and won. And I was using, you know, I'm using Halfling Refugee, which I think is this card, by the way, 5 and 2. My Halfling Refugee record is ridiculous. That's another card that we need to talk about. The Soulbound Reward cards. Some of these Soulbound Reward cards, the win records are crazy. You know, a lot of people talk about Tofu, or maybe a lot of people talk about things like Night Stalker, but I don't hear a lot of people talking about the Soulbound Reward cards and how crazy they are. We used to point to things like Iziar from the Chaos Legion Soulbound Reward cards, and we'd say how impossible it is to beat that thing when your opponent has a max level with the Martyr and the Void and the Taunt. And that synergy is crazy, but you know, when we look at some of the Soulbound Reward cards, which we'll talk about in a minute after we move away from Tofu, you'll see just, I mean, the win rates are crazy. But even at 12 to 19, Tofu a winner. There, or at least 500. 20 to 29, 4 and 2. 3 and 1. 4 and 0. So that's just, these are ludicrous. And I was trying to stuff it into situations that maybe I shouldn't have as well. Like, I honestly think 2 or 3 of these losses are really my fault more than anything. I think even on one of my losses, I didn't apply scavenge and triage. I didn't do anything. I didn't apply any of the tactics. I think it glitched, actually, to be honest. But my point with that one is, I think the point that I was trying to make with respect to bringing up Eternal Tofu was, as impactful as it is, and clearly it's impactful. Clearly it works in, you know, a wide range of circumstances because of both. It's one of the rare cases where both of the tactics actually are effective. The Divine Shield times 3 or the Scavenge and Triage times 1, both are effective approaches, and not all the summoners do that well. For instance, Lorcus. In my opinion, with Lorcus, you got to do the Life Leech. You can't do there's no real effectiveness to the Life Leech. Affliction is far more powerful than the Trample Fury. And I find that is the case with most of the summoners. Risk Eldrath, I really strongly prefer the True Strike, and I will occasionally lean on the Taunt. Nidhogger, it's almost always Execute with the speed. I don't necessarily do the Blast. And so they all seem to have their lane, but Tofu has that diversity and that functionality that both work. As I've been exploring more recently, I rented Nidhogger. I've had good success with it. 18 and 20 this season. Lifetime on my Nidhogger, 32 and 39. Not great, but again, I think I'm trying to fit into every situation and circumstance. But this is something that's blown me away. I've been looking at these legendaries and saying, you know, let's go current month again. I'm like Risk Eldrath or Eternal Tofu, and they're in my opinion, they're the two strongest. Or sorry, I meant to say Risk Eldrath and Tofu. And beyond that, they're all really amazing. But those two to me are the number 1 and number 2. However, recently, look at this data. Akane has blown me away and surprised me. And this is interesting because for a long time, Akane has really been in the background. But I don't know if I've recently devised some new mechanisms or approaches with this, or, you know, if this is just maybe some new cards or new synergies that have come through. What I'm finding is if you can bring the right cards, including some some cards that already have ambush, you know, if you're not just relying on 2 ambushes, but in fact your whole team gets a turn 0, that goes well. And the record here at 466 on lifetime, but current month we're 7 and 3, and sure, small sample size, but I've really been leaning into. I wonder. In fact, it's none of these. Like I've been leaning into. Usually I do use the Nag Assassin because it's going to go into the back slot and it's only 2 mana. It's going to give my whole speed buff, my whole team a speed buff. But I'm going to show you a battle right now. I've got Mantaroth, and that's pretty serious. Armor, heavy metal units, scatter shot, blast. So the blast is in some sense diminishing my capacity or the importance of Mantaroth, because now everyone has blast and I don't need it from Mantaroth. But I wanted to do double strikes and I wanted a main tank, and then I brought in him. And so this is going to work for us, and we're just going to push our way through. And the ambush gets us 3 separate attacks in turn 0. 2 with Mantaroth and 1 with the Basilisks. And as close as it does sort of look, maybe in this moment, we are going to pull it out. And I do this more than once too. Like, this is actually very, very close. One more shot, he would have killed my Basilisk, and he might have been initial to, no, I guess I would have pulled it out still, but that was a nice tight win with the Akane. And there's more here. Look at this match. This is actually a loss. But look at what I was trying here. Because I did this in the last, let's say 48 hours, I've done this 5 times. I'm utilizing some of the monsters that have the debilitations, but they have the huge damage output. Shock Troopers are one example, but you could also use the fire unit with Incendiary with the 5 or 6 bomb, depending on what level you're at. And look at my opponent. We are going to, even though there's a Divine Shield on the Pellicor Conjurer turn, we're going to delete this thing before it even fires. Watch this. And we've got Ambush over here with the Kai. I only have a level 3 Kai, by the way, so that could get better too. I bring this because it's low cost mana, and it also provides a Shatter. If my opponent brings a big armor, we're going to fire relatively fast with a 4 speed, and we bring a Shatter. The Shock Trooper, like I said, is going to get one of the ambushes and is going to go nuclear in the round 0 plus in round 1. And the coolness between that and Kai is that for this case with the Divine Shield and the Pellicor Conjurer, Kai is going to hit for 3, and then the 5 bomb is going to land. And we also have another ambush. So we have 2 starting ambushes, and we're going to drop 1. And I think I did another over here. I did, yeah. I put 1 on the Naga Assassin. The Naga Assassin was an option with a Akane because it's only going to do 2 damage, but it's going to fire first, and it's going to break the Divine Shield, meaning the Kai will land with its full power. So watch this. It doesn't work, but watch the successfulness of my approach. Now, he resurrects. I deleted him twice before he starts, and I'm feeling good right now as I watch this back. But then that True Strike got me. So that was in part, that was a product of really Dax Paragon amplifying the Magic Reflect that hurt my monster. But let's keep watching. And then of course the Celestial Harpy doing what it has to do. But we do miss a shot there, right there. We missed that shot. It should be dead, and it wouldn't have killed my main tank if I had killed it. Now it's gonna go ahead and kill. So we had to hit it 2 more times because of the Void Armor, and because it dodged my 1 magic attack from Musa Alien, which has a 5 speed, by the way. Because it dodged me once and didn't die, it then killed my main tank, and then it got an armor from the repair, which caused a Void Armor protection, and then it ended up taking 3 shots to kill something that on that first shot should have killed it, and that's why we lose. And so, and look at that, the Kai goes down, and even the repair there sustained him again. Oh, I'm feeling good even now. Like, give me a dodge. I'm screaming to myself, give me 1 dodge, one freaking dodge, even right here, right, with the backfire on the, but nothing. So I really feel like even that is an example of how this can work well with the multi ambushes. And I haven't been utilizing that. I've owned Akane forever, but I've kind of put it in the back seat, and I'm feeling as though this video is my moment where I'm recognizing some things that I've believed for weeks now. Like, for instance, Night Stalker is excellent, and it's probably up there with Dr. Blight. But actually, another piece, like I said, it might even be that counter because of the camo and how camos are used. Tofu is great, but it's not even in some situations. It's full stop. It's great. But there are also great other cards that have been overlooked and I think that are underused. And definitely Akane is actually one of them. But then simultaneously, look at the success with Brewmaster Abraxas 7 and 4. And you can say what you want about these common summoners that don't have any ability. Look, there's 8 and 9 lifetime. I would argue I'm starting to recognize the synergies, and so I think the current month data is more reflective, not less reflective. And the 3 mana, in so often just giving you that extra mana, especially like I said, some of these epics, some of these new Soulbound reward cards being as crazy as they are, that 1 mana that you save on this summoner versus, for instance, any of the Rift Watcher 4 mana summoners or Chaos Legion 4 mana summoners, it really matters. And so with that said, let's look at some of these Soulbound summoners, Soulbound cards like, come in here first, close it out, Rebellion Reward. We're going to we'll look at the epic specifically. Shock Trooper, Kazi Conjurer. Let's look at the data. Monsters. Kazi. There's Kazi Conjurer. 27 and 26 lifetime. Current month. Kazi Conjurer current month. 14 and 3. And I'm telling you, part of that success, probably 3 of those wins with Kazi Conjurer are because of me using Akane. And so what I'm trying to point to beyond this like mediocre lifetime record is that I'm beginning to recognize key synergies that have existed now since these Soulbound cards were released that are probably more notable than you've recognized. And I actually think they change the game with respect to specifically debilitation monsters. Do you see that? Because the Kazi Conjurer card, this one right here, because the artwork is not currently uploaded on Splinter Coach, but this card right here, crazy 6 bomb at the highest level, piercing, and great speed and decent amount of hit points, but it's got Incendiary, which gives 2 damage to my own unit, as well as a chance to damage my neighbor units. In fact, it can spread through the whole team if it's given enough time. So that's going to kill me. But if I can get literally a nuclear bomb set off of my opponent, of 6 damage, of 5 damage in turn 0, I'm not going to get incendiary damage in turn 0, by the way. And so I literally get to double up my damage. And it's this huge, fast-paced, the speed of 5 at the highest levels, 4 at the level 5 where I have it. The piercing punches through any armor. The 5 bomb turns into a 10 bomb because of the ambush plus round 1. And then you're by the end of round 1, you're getting incendiary damage for the first time. But usually the game is well decided because of the impact this card has had. And the Shock Trooper is the same deal. In that example, it didn't work out, but I think I made a strong case for why it didn't work out. And it was really about that one perfect dodge. And then at the end of the level, my Naga Assassin not dodging. And so this again is the same deal. If you can go drop a 5 bomb on your opponent in turn 0 and do it again in round 1, good luck to them. And I do believe a lot of this is the same. If there's a flight or earthquake rule set and having the Night Reaper out there with the 4 bomb, which becomes a 6 bomb because of wing break, plus 2 damage to any target that has flying. This card's amazing, by the way. I just upgraded to level 6 recently with the Last Stand. And so, of course, these are good. But they're not just noteworthy. I think they need to give you pause with respect to how you've approached some of the summoners that you've begun to overlook. And I think I'm speaking accurately and broadly about our community when I say we have overlooked Akane. I think the price point on Peak Monsters reflects that. I think the data, at least from my own history, because I've had that card since it came out, and yet I just haven't really used it very much. And in part it's because maybe I didn't have some of those ambush monsters, and I do think Akane really thrives when you have access to ambush in your deck. But more recently I have bought ambush cards, and so I bought a Max Sultry Barmaid, which has ambush and it does level 3, it does 3 archery damage with decent speed for 5 mana. I love that. And I also have a max Chaos Evoker, and I also rent Drybone Bowdog quite often. I have a max Rush Townsend, and so if you can, and then I have a level 3 Kai. And so my point is, if you can bring out 2 or 3 of these and add two more ambushes, you're probably deleting the best tank on your opponent's team before the game begins. That's crazy. And complement that conversation with the crazy new Soulbound reward cards, which everyone talks about as being really powerful, maybe even overpowered. And yes, it starts with the epics, or maybe that's the place where Shock Trooper and Kazi Conjurer, and maybe Night Reaper, probably Thanalorian Blade if you get her at the top level where she got 4 damage, Trample, Execute. How crazy would that be if that's proccing in round 0? The Execute, the Trample, it's all possible. You can do 12 damage in round 0 with Thanalorian Blade, depending on the timing. If she's got if she's got 3 speed, she'll be one of the last ones if she finishes, right? So that's another crazy example, which I haven't dabbled in because I don't have it at max level yet. But I do think, and that's just the epics, I think probably there's similar things across the others as well. But those epics with those crazy 5 bombs and 6 bombs are worth recognizing this power and this opportunity. And I do think we are not currently utilizing it effectively. And I'm definitely going to start exploring that more fully over the next few weeks. And I would wager that I'm going to, my bet, and I'll leave it here, is that I'm going to start to see this value on Akane tick up. The high bid at $7 and the low buy at $12.50 or $11.82 for a 1 BCX, for a multi BCX. So if you want to buy a max copy, it's $130. If you want to buy 1 BCX, it's $12.50. I think I'm going to start proving something, and I think this card is going to start being acknowledged. And I do think it's largely dependent upon some of those soulbound cards that I now or recently have acquired and that you probably acquired. And so if you've already got Akane, maybe it's time for another look. And if you are rocking Night Stalker, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on the susceptibility or maybe the power and capacity over camouflage, and maybe other ways that you're seeing that one work too, because I still am getting a crazy win rate out of that one. But otherwise, guys, I'm going to leave it there. Thanks so much for your time and attention. I hope you have an amazing day. God bless.